Good morning, and welcome to Movement and Meditation. My name is Patton White, and I am the Artistic and Administrative Director of Beacon Dance, and we are coming to you from the Beacon Dance Studio in the B Complex, which is in Southwest Atlanta, Georgia. And in the Capitol View neighborhood, just throwing that out there. And as I promised on Monday, this has indeed been sort of an extraordinary week with the election. And I think we're all probably still processing it in our own unique way. And our focus this week has been on the organ system and the heart specifically, and some of the qualitative states that the heart, that live in the heart. And on Monday we went through a series of exercises that got us feeling different aspects of the heart. On Wednesday, we had a story circle where we shared stories about feeling closed to people. And we had a range of responses during that that we're going to explore today through our revisiting much of the movement vocabulary that we did on Monday, and infusing this, some of these themes or ideas that came into play on Wednesday. So I'm going to go ahead and back up, and we're going to start with and I'm going to start off seated today, and then eventually move to standing. But find for yourself, similar to how we started on Monday, just a very comfortable seated position or standing, either one, where you're just at rest, and allow the eyes to close. And then let's go ahead and take our hands and place them right over the heart. Sensing where in the body the heart itself resides. It's adjacent to the lungs. And as we did on Monday, let's just take some time to direct our breath into the heart itself. So breathing in and out, really finding the breath directed towards the heart. Noticing if you feel any sort of emotions rising to the surface as you breathe in and out. As you care with your hands, you take care by drawing your awareness to that place in the body where the heart resides. Breathing into the heart, directing the breath into the heart. And now let's allow the arms to release down towards the legs or down to the sides. And instead of directing the breath from the lungs into the heart, we're going to reverse this process a little bit as we begin to acknowledge this idea of the heart and the lungs, or introducing this idea of the heart and the lungs being friends. And that at sometimes we feel like we can be very open to friends, and sometimes we feel like we need to be more closed to them. And so, at this point, let's have the heart itself direct the breath. So we're breathing from the heart and noticing how it's different for yourself. Instead of directing the breath into the heart, finding how the heart itself directs the breath. Feeling that sense of open and closed. The beats of the heart, the action of the blood that's flowing through the heart, the electrical stimulations of the beats, all of those are driving us to the breath, driving the breath itself. And still staying with this idea of the heart and the lungs being friends. And sometimes you have to be open to the friendship. Sometimes you might want to be closed to the friendship. As we continue this idea of directing the breath, I'm going to go ahead and move to standing. But you can, again, remain seated or you can join me standing. Either one is fine. But I'm going to begin to allow my center of gravity to just shift from one side to the other. And just as friendships ebb and flow, I'm finding that sense of opening to somebody and closing to somebody. Knowing that we can't always be everything to everybody. Allowing the arms to follow this swaying action. Side to side in my coronal plane. Opening and closing. Opening and closing. Let's go ahead and add in this idea as we shift from one side to the other, that we open one side, we open the opposite side, and then we close and we close. And we're also going to acknowledge that as we do this, opening and closing, that our perception of this idea of are we opening, are we closing, can also be influenced by what surface of the body we are paying attention to. In this case, I'm really drawing my attention to my front surface of the body. I'm going to do this for a second, seated too. So again, the front surface of my body is where I'm really finding my focus to be. Sorry, move this way just a little bit more. And I'm using one body half to open this front side of the body. And then open the opposite side of the body. and then closing and closing. Opening, opening, and closing, and closing. However, if we have a different perspective, if this is the surface that you're seeing, I'll start off seated and then I'll do it standing as well. So, as I close this direction, it's really opening up the back side, the back surfaces of my body. And as I open here, it begins this idea of kind of closing, even though I can't close quite as much to the back space, but I'm closing it a little bit before I open it back up. I'm going to try this now standing. So we have closing to the back space, opening to the back space, closing, and opening. Again, and closing. All right, let's move on to the next theme that cropped up. This idea. So that's all of that was playing playing around a little bit with this idea of opening and closing with a friend. Now let's bring into this into the space a family member, so a blood relation. And for this, let's shift our focus away from the coronal plane to the sagittal plane, the front and the back, and up and down. So we're playing with those elements. So let's begin by scooping up in front, and with the opposite. So we scoop up and then we release down and scoop up. So there's a swinging action that's forwards and backwards, and we're alternating. Bringing it in and then extending down and back. Bringing in, extend down and back. In, release, in, release, in, release, in, release. And this, for me, brings this idea of family, because often with our family, it's about finding how we're kind of lifting each other up, supporting one another. If we think about mothers and how they, after giving birth, nurture us through the arms, scooping. There's many ways that nurturing takes place by not just mothers, but also fathers. There's this sense of work that's happening here, work that helps to support all members of the family. Reaching, releasing, reaching, releasing, reaching, releasing, reaching, releasing. And now we're going to shift just ever so slightly and go into this idea that can stay within the family of wanting but not getting. Wanting but not getting. And I'm going to, for myself, allow the angle of my torso to go in tandem with my arms, wanting, so reaching and not getting, and so retreating. And reaching, wanting, not getting, retreating. Wanting, not getting, retreating. And let's do one more to the side. Back in. I'm going to try this standing this time. again, forwards, lunging, and not getting emptiness comes in. Lunging and in. So this is slightly diagonal, forwards, reaching, pulling back in, diagonal to the opposite side, pulling back in. Now let's go back diagonal. So we're playing a little bit more with the spatial element. Again, back diagonal. Just like earlier when I was facing the back. Let's see what all this now looks like if my back is facing. So I'm reaching forwards, but it's reaching away from the viewer. What's happening with my back surface? When we start to see something from a different perspective. Coming back to the center. Our perspective. Isn't that an interesting thing to ponder? As we move on to empathy. Empathy came up towards the end, but we're going to let it filter into our space a little bit throughout this. As we ponder, as we reflect on what has transpired this week, where we are as a country, where we are as individual citizens in that country, knowing that there is such intense polarization. If ever there was this complete example, this very tangible example of how the heart is about being open and closed, we have a lot of people who are really closed to one another. And how can we go through the process of starting to open up a little bit to these people? What would that mean for us? And part of it comes from that sense of empathy. Empathy is, it's part of dialogue that we have with others. And so perhaps we can start into this idea of empathy by asking somebody that you may feel closed off from at this point, asking them what's going on with them, how are they feeling. I'm going to try a little bit of this standing. How would I embody asking how somebody's feeling? For me, I'm going to find a way to open myself up, knowing that this is a vulnerable position. Allowing my hands to be open. Allowing the inner surfaces of my arms to be visible and open. Let's take a little bit of a cue from this song that's playing, circle, coming full circle, by bringing energy in from outside and letting it filter down into our center meridian. Perhaps we can just invite somebody, rather than having a discussion with them, to begin to move together in some way. Let's shift from one side to the other again. Bringing in, gathering in. Gathering in. And again, the heart driving this effort, shifting back and forth. I'm going to go ahead and move to seated again. Let's take a moment to move into a very different emotion. That is this sense of anger. It was one of the emotions that came up that was articulated in the story circle. Let's see how it changes our movement quality by letting the gesture be this idea of extending the arm in whatever direction, but with a sharp directness. And as we're doing this, we can also come back in towards the center, that sense of expressing anger, slicing, cutting, that there's a sense of directness that's also related to our lymph fluids that we were playing with a couple weeks ago. Maybe it was last week, I forget. But the lymph fluids, in concert with the heart expressing this anger, is about finding authenticity in addition to real communication. The largeness of the movements doesn't have to be as large as I was doing it. Finding that sense of direct, sharp, staccato, boundaries setting. But it's that sense of the anger, letting go of that. Letting it go, so that we don't have to live with it. Expressing it through the movement. And maybe for you, it's not about this slicing. Maybe for you, there's a boundness, but maybe it is more free-flowing. But it is important to let go of that anger and to not hang on to it. as we move into our last emotional exploration, and that is this idea we all need to feel that we belong. I think that there's a huge kernel of what's driving this tension, this polarization, however we want to to visualize it through movement through our bodies. But, I think this is just my personal opinion, but we, and it was actually an observation in our story circle that there is this desire for us all to belong in some place, in some way, to a community. And the feeling of being perhaps left out or excluded. So let's begin to wind ourselves into our final little bit of movement that's about the antidote to the anger. What is the movement? What is some gestural movement that can bring us into this feeling of belongingness? Qualitatively, where do you feel like you belong? You may actually feel like you belong more at this end of the spectrum. For me, that sense of boundaries, that's a hard place for me to go. And so in empathizing with some of these people that I may disagree with, how can I make use of my heart, speaking and moving from my heart, let's finish up with just a little bit of a hand dance. I'm going to move a little bit closer to this lovely song. This group is called Vocalote. Finding empathy. How can we come together? Finding that sense of the heartbeat. Making it a little more complex. So we're going to leave it there for today. My heart really is so full of so many different emotions because of what has happened this week and what will continue to be happening in the weeks to come.
Next week we're going to continue with our focus on the organs, but we're going to move to the lungs specifically, and what the lungs bring to our movement qualitatively, emotionally, and how we can perhaps use that again in this idea of the friendship between the heart, the lungs. Of course, all of our internal organs are friends. They work in partnership with each other, and we have lots to learn from them. How can we find that same sense of partnership with those around us? Thank you again to Fulton County Board of Commissioners for funding this ongoing program. Have a safe and meaningful weekend, and I will see you on Monday. If you do happen to be in Atlanta and would like to come spend some time processing some of the emotions that you may be feeling in the wake of this election season, Beacon Dance will be holding space through performance and meditation in Freedom Park, where Candler Street dead ends into Freedom Park. And we will be there between 3 and 6 p.m. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So today, tomorrow, and Sunday, with a looping performance that starts on the quarter hour, so 3:15, 4:15, and 5:15. So you can come and stay for as long or as short as you may want, but it's just an opportunity to move yourself in the outdoors and to heal. Thank you again for being with me today, and we'll see you. Bye-bye.